Hi everyone and welcome to our webinar. This webinar today we're going to be joined by Dee Gotsopoulos, who's joining us from Colorado, and of course we'll be joined by Ivan, and we'd love you to put in the chat where you're from. I can see we've already got people from Finland, from Canada, New Mexico. Welcome all of you. As always, we'd love to answer your questions, so as well as saying hello in the chat, please do put any queries or ideas, sparks, or any questions you might have. So as usual, let me give a big warm welcome to Ivan. Hi, Ivan. How are you?
Hello. Very busy with our team in Helsinki here. We have quite a lot of new product updates coming up. So we had lots of discussions today and going to have even more tomorrow.
Excellent. So yeah, we got together in Helsinki a few weeks ago, didn't we, and talked about the roadmap. And yeah, there's some really exciting developments ahead. So if you have any account queries at all, please do put them in the chat as well, because Ivan's going to be answering your questions. And I know everyone always sings your praises, Ivan, for how diligent you are in getting back to people in your role as head of support. So please do, yes, ask any questions. So I'm just going to send you to the back room, Ivan, to answer the questions. We'll see you a bit later on at the end. Hello from Tel Aviv as well. Welcome to our webinar. And it's my great pleasure. We have a new team member who joined us a few months ago, and it's an honor to introduce our special guest, Dee Gotsopoulos. Hi, Dee.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be a part of these webinars. I'm really excited to talk about the innovations in learning and development today. A little bit about myself, just to intro to everyone on the call. So my name is Dee Gotsopoulos, obviously Greek last name. So feel free to make any jokes about that, or if you're worried about me talking fast. But a little bit about myself. So I studied psychology, and I have a focus on industrial organizational psychology. So really focused on human behavior in the workplace. From there, I found a career in HR tech, and I have been in HR tech for the past 6 years. And I have had a focus on learning and development for the past 3 years. So I've been in this space for a little bit and really focus on those innovations and how you can utilize those to maximize human behavior in the workplace.
That's an impressive resume, Dee. And if people want to get in touch with you, we've got your details at the end of the webinar, so people can just click and also schedule a call with you as well. But this webinar, we're going to have a little bit of an agenda, which I can just run through for you quickly. So we know that many of you that are joining us are existing ThingLink users, but also many of you who are joining us today might not have used ThingLink before. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of what ThingLink is, just so that you've got the right context going forward. And then luckily, Dee, joining us obviously today, has freshly been to go and see some great EdTech conferences. So that was a conference in Texas, wasn't it?
It was in Austin, Texas, TechLearn specifically. So I got to really learn about a lot of the new technology out there when it comes to learning and development.
Awesome. So as well as your news and views and everything you've learned, not only in your role, but also going to these conferences, we're going to be triangulating our points that we're going to be making about innovation in learning and development from a couple of other sources as well. So we've carried out a little bit of research. We'll be publishing this later on, I'm sure. But we contacted over 500 people who have key roles within learning and development, and just asked them a few questions about what was their top priorities, what are their concerns, and we'll be able to present a couple of snapshots from that. We're also going to be using our own experience. We're so lucky because we get to see what people are creating right the way from K to 12, right the way through to lifelong learning. And we're seeing people who maybe operate at the sharper end of the stick when it comes to innovation and the kinds of things that they're creating. So we've triangulated these three sources of great information and put this together for you. There will be an email that's coming out to you after the webinar. So roughly 20 to 30 minutes after the webinar, you'll get that email direct in your inbox. Not only will it include the replay link, but we'll also put the deck that we're going to be presenting here, any links that we think you might enjoy reading, and also contact details as well. So look out for that email. But a huge welcome to you all for joining us. We can see we've got someone from Canada that's joining us now, someone from the UK. Welcome to Alicia there, and Natalie, who's also joining from Nottingham. So we'll just start off by having a little look about what ThingLink is. And if you weren't aware, ThingLink is 13 years old, coming up 14 years old. And Ulla Maria Koivula here, our founder and CEO, she had the brainwave, if you like, all of those years ago about connecting physical and virtual worlds, digital worlds, and how we can make anything an interface for learning. And that was something that was hugely ambitious 14 years ago. And of course, you know, this is so relevant, so right, and just bang on trend for today. And if I had a way of summing up what ThingLink is today, this is our kind of 2024, eking into 2025, what we see as our raison d'etre, or what is the core of ThingLink. So we exist to transform your learning experiences from your existing static materials, that might be your PDFs or your PowerPoints or other types of materials, into interactive experiences. And we do that by enhancing virtual and physical spaces with layers of multimodal information. And by that, we mean we bring it to life by things you can see, hear, experience, and immerse yourself into that space. So that's where we are with ThingLink today. But as I mentioned, being 14 years old, there's been quite a journey. So this journey that we've gone on from static to immersive actually started out all those years ago just by making images interactive. And then through the years, adding in these different types of media. So making videos interactive. And there was a real milestone moment here when in 2016, we brought in the ability to make 360 images and 360 videos. And not a lot of people were using 360 media there, but they could be used to make your own immersive learning experiences, such as trips and tours and all of those kinds of experiences, bringing a whole new meaning to being able to create those yourself. We'd only send things like expeditions at the time. And then as a natural progression, being able to add in 3D objects and make those fully immersive. And then as we move on through the years, we've been able to develop our own tools so that you can even take with your mobile phone a panoramic image, upload that to ThingLink, and we turn it into a 360 photosphere. Someone's just put a message in the chat. Can I rewatch this on YouTube? Yes, you can. And it's exactly the same link. So you can, yes, create your own photospheres just from your mobile phone. And that's been another milestone moment. And then, of course, moving into the future, we've got mixed reality headsets, immersive spaces, and beyond as we go. But the whole point of this is that we see a lot of tools that are used, or products that are used for learning and development, where you're taking things off the shelf. And quite often these types of off-the-shelf types of training materials, they just aren't relevant and relatable. So the point with this is, and our differentiating point, if you like, is that you can create your own contextual learning, so that is right, relevant, contextually, and even culturally relevant for all of your learners. So I hope I did it justice there, Dee. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, absolutely. So, I mean, when we're talking about learning development, one of the biggest things that we hear is that is engagement. That's the biggest issue that every learning development specialist is trying to solve, is how do we engage our learners? And the reality of it is making the training relevant to their actual daily jobs and their roles. So that is really what we're talking about when we're talking about contextual learning.
And just to show you a little bit of this in action with experiential learning. So rather than watching a video, rather than watching a set of PowerPoints, here we are. That's just a snippet to show you that experiential learning can be that kind of pick your own path adventure type, where you can click on different outcomes and then see the consequences of those outcomes. And that's when you can really make the opportunity for people to experience things in a safe place. Because quite difficult subjects like CPR, you just don't want to get it wrong, do you? But also, you know, having the opportunity to see what happens if you don't get it right in a safe place. So that's a little bit about ThingLink. I've got one more little example here that I was quite keen to show people, and I'm just going to click on this one here. So bringing that all together, here's a really nice example that a company has made, which is a factory, it's a production plant. And what they've been able to do is to combine these 360 elements, and then you click on the hotspots there, and you're able to go and take a walkthrough of a particular department. Here it's all about making weather radars. And here we've got another ThingLink which is embedded, which has got little videos. It's that layers of multimodal types of media that is really helping people to understand that topic and make it more engaging. So yes, I hope I've done that justice. And here we have Jed from the University of Southampton joining us as well. Hi Jed, great to see you. So as we move on now into innovation and learning and development for 2025, we thought we'd put four pillars together, Dee. Do you want to just run us through those first two?
Yeah, absolutely. Coming fresh off of TechLearn, I was happy to see that a few of the topics we were covering today were top of mind for a lot of L&D experts and thought leaders in the space. So first, and we will talk about today, is really going to be around skill-based learning, scenario-based learning, and simulations. Also, there are new standards in interoperability. We will talk about XAPI, where it's going, and really why SCORM files are on their last leg when it comes to capturing that learner data.
I think some people might be pleased to hear that, but you're going to demystify that for us when we come to talk about that section. And then following on from that, I mean, a lot of people are really kind of, keen to hear about what mixed reality is, extended reality, and immersive spaces. And, we often jump to headsets, but immersive spaces are so much more than just headsets. And then lastly, another trend that we're seeing, these are the movers and shakers in the learning and development world, is really about the inclusivity we're seeing and the collective input from everybody. And we'll be taking a deeper dive into that. So Dee, over to you to guide us through that first pillar.
Absolutely. Before we jump into that, I'd love to love this cartoon, by the way. And this is really what we're talking about, engagement. Along with engagement, one key component that every educator, L&D leader wants to solve is click-through learning, or my favorite term for it, pencil whipping, but you can see it can be called many, many things here. And I think we can all relate to this cartoon. I can recall times where training to me felt like a burden in some ways because I had a lot of other tasks on my hand. So I clicked through, really just wanted to, kind of get through the training so I can get back to my daily tasks. And the standing question here is, how do we solve this? How do we solve click-through learning?
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. And it wasn't just the click through the slides. It was also the questions were just so obvious that you could not actually watch the video and just go straight through and answer the questions because you had a pretty good guess that you get it right with hardly any knowledge of the topic. So yeah, totally can see this There's some other names for it there: zombie clicking, speed clicking. If you've got any other names for it, put them in the chat. Click and forget. That's one thing that and of course people, have tried to kind of put in some ways of getting around this, but ultimately, if you're just using one button to get through something, that's what's going to happen, isn't it?
Great. Does anyone, I mean, the name's right there, but does anyone know who this is? The answer is a very smart person, Confucius. And I say he's very smart because one of the things that he talks about is I do and I understand. So the easiest way to learn and retain knowledge, we know, is by doing. And new innovations in learning and development have really made this possible. And a lot we will talk about that today as well. Now, before we jump into those innovations, I want to talk a little bit about what L&D teams care about, and to add context as to why these innovations matter. Luis mentioned earlier, ThingLink sent out a market survey to 549 US-based learning and development professionals, and when asked what type of training content is prioritized by your organization, we found, interesting enough, that skill development was the main use case identified. So skill development, style, and I'm really curious, actually, I'm just going to ask a question for the chat. Is this a surprise to anyone on the call, or are there any other use cases that are a priority when it comes to your learning and development needs that are not listed in the survey?
It's really interesting to see skills development, technical or soft skills, because skills that are called soft, it seems like it's a strange name for them because they're actually pretty important, aren't they? By that we're meaning critical thinking, being able to be analytical, appraise things, all of those types of skills.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where we'll talk about in a second. Let's actually go through how can we upskill our learners faster and really teach them those soft skills. So go ahead and jump into, really the answer is through simulation and scenario-based learning. Now, what is simulation? Simulation is a technique to amplify real experiences with guided experiences, often immersive, that evoke aspects of the real world in an interactive fashion. So why simulation? First of all, there are a lot of benefits. And this isn't our research, right? Dr. Leah Green from University of Salford, Manchester explains that simulation is beneficial to learners because it brings them from a passive learning state into an active one. And that's really what we want to see. Going back to the words of Confucius, I do and I understand. And this is really what we're talking about when it comes to simulation. Also, according to Deloitte, immersive learning can be more engaging and efficient way to learn, allowing learners to practice real-world tasks in a controlled virtual environment, providing immediate feedback and the opportunity to improve their skills. So if you're focusing on upskilling or reskilling, soft skills, whatever it may be for your current learners, in a simulated environment, you can do so 40% faster. Now, let's go ahead and take it a step further, and we'll talk about scenario-based simulations. So you might be asking yourself, well, what's the difference? Well, a regular simulation is just performing a task, right? When you're thinking in the form of VR, it can be, I am performing my task at hand. A scenario-based simulation involves performing a task with multiple branching paths that unfold based on how the task is executed. So like Luis showed in the beginning, my decision-making can lead to different outcomes or different consequences or additional simulations, really allowing learners to experience various scenarios and consequences. If we dive into this further and we want to understand how this is going to be even more beneficial, well, one way scenario-based simulations are effective is because they incorporate failure-based learning. In her book, The Right Kind of Wrong, thought leader and a Harvard Business School professor discusses how failure is not a personal flaw, it's a learning opportunity. And ultimately, if it's handled correctly, it really allows learners to fail in a consequence-free environment and can lead to better learning outcomes. So better knowledge retention, and less errors in a real life scenario. So another kind of benefit here is that there is no real world risk. So to put this into kind of an example, if let's say you're in healthcare and you make a mistake, if you're making a mistake while training on the job or doing on the job training, there are real world consequences, right? A patient can be affected by those real world consequences. By creating these simulations, you allow your learners to make those mistakes, learn from them, and learn the consequences of those mistakes so that it doesn't happen in real life. This leads to less real world errors and more knowledge retention. Finally, the last 2 points here. When you're using traditional learning methods, it can feel a bit theoretical to learners because they're not always immersed in the training. It doesn't feel as personal. It could be kind of those PowerPoint slides, whatever it might be. So scenario-based learning really bridges the gap between theory and actual practice. And last but not least, according to a study conducted by Striver, scenario-based simulations not only reduce training time by 40%, but it also improves trainee confidence by 80%. So now we have confident learners. Not only are they retaining the information, we're reducing the time, and they're confident to perform their real-world tasks, showing that it's going to be effective in the long run.
It's just some lovely comments coming through. So first of all, Marit, who I know is in Finland, is asking if we're going to hold a session on ThingLink Scenario Builder. And I think we'd be delighted to do that, wouldn't we? Yes, so absolutely. And Claudia here is just saying, love simulations, so useful. And, you know, there's something really lovely in there, which is the kind of the physical sense that you can have when you're engaging with scenario-based simulations. And Dr. Leah Green, who you mentioned before, actually did some research on this, and they measured people's physical outcomes. So did they have a heightened sense of excitement or engagement, or did they have empathy with the situation? And that really helped to reinforce the fact that it was more relevant and relatable to them. And I think that's a really, really nice point. Yet somebody else saying that they'd love to have a session on Scenario Builder. Absolutely, we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, of course, scenario-based simulations and almost that kind of role play, you know, you could say that that has evolved from schools, because we know that in a lot of acting and a lot of simulations that you might have done when you're present in a class might have been more kind of role play types of approaches, which kind of brings us neatly onto this next point that is a trend that we're seeing as well. And that is, there's not really a kind of a wall anymore between what we would say is pedagogy, which is the approaches that you might take in, say, schools, to the approaches that you would take for adult learning or learning and development, which historically has been andragogy. So the kind of walls come down there. And we kind of thought, you know, why is that we're seeing these advanced types of approaches in learning and development? And the first thing is, a lot of people, like educators, are actually going into the world of learning and development, becoming instructional designers. They might work in schools, they might work in higher education, and then develop their careers into learning and development. And just to kind of reiterate some of this, I've got a really nice example here. Some of you might have seen this one before, but this is a learning asset that could be accessed for people who are going to work in this water plant. And it's really got a kind of games-based escape room style to it. So here we've got the number 1, and you click on the number 1 and you've arrived on the site. Here's the kind of magic key, if you like, to turn the power on. And there's a little video there of how to do it. You can see the number 2 now. And the first thing here is you get the key. This is, to me, it's really similar to an escape room. I guess what instructional designers are really seeing is the importance of breaking down complex procedures, standard operating procedures into really nice bite-sized things and bite-sized chunks. Someone's asking for the link to this simulation. Yes, of course, we'd be delighted to send it over to you. And then, of course, once you've unlocked got the key, if you like, then you can go here into the cabinet, and then it goes down into that detail, the granular or the minutiae elements of working here in this installation process. So I thought that was a nice example that kind of exemplifies that. The other example that I thought exemplified the kind of transition we're seeing of approaches is in schools, teachers use a lot of interactive choice boards. These might be for having differentiated tasks or having lots of information with one link to access all of that information. And this is actually a mock-up that we did of an actual example where an organization has created this kind of choice board that's got interactive elements. You can hear,
hello, I'm
from the director there, you've got your health and safety training embedded. So these types of interactive choice boards are just becoming more commonplace. And of course, you can add in all of your other types of training there as well. So that's one of a couple of examples of the way that we're seeing this kind of blurriness between the types of approaches, and even more so since the pandemic, when I think people realize that those kind of self-paced experiential learning modules, which can be accessed anywhere, anytime, are just as relevant for young people as well as adult learners. And that's made the difference. And I guess the last point to this is that there's been such an emphasis on accessibility in schools. And now we're seeing the importance of accessibility in higher education, further education, but also the learning and development world, where legislation such as WCAG has made that imperative, but they're also seeing the benefits of making things accessible to everybody, no matter what their requirements are, whether you know them or you don't, which of course, you might not know. So yeah, just a really interesting point there, and how those worlds have blurred. And yes, Marit will be delighted to share that choice board with you as well, that mock-up.
Interestingly enough, Louise, too, to kind of back off of it, or piggyback off of this, I've had recently a lot of conversations with former educators who have shifted into the L&D space, into their careers, and they use ThingLink at, let's say, their university, or they've used it in the past. So bringing that gamified experience into their new careers in L&D, it's been a trend that I've been seeing a lot of as well.
Amazing. So we've already covered one great point, which is about a trend that we're seeing with those kind of interactive scenarios, making sure that everything's really, really engaging. But I didn't know a lot about XAPI until you brought this to us, Dee. But yeah, we've kind of heard about LTI and other things like that. Maybe some people haven't. Interoperability, there's a new kid on the block. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So XAPI is a specification that really allows us, anyone who's conducting a training, to track and record learning experiences across multiple platforms and devices in one learning record store, whether that be an actual learning record store, your LMS, your LXP, wherever that might be. LTI is a common term used in education for transferring the data. But the most standard method we see in L&D is SCORM. And now I've talked to so many L&D experts, and they absolutely hate their SCORM files, but really, it seems like there's no way around it because of the tools available to them for content creation. The big problem with SCORM is that you're really limited to only a few learning metrics, and they're standard in every SCORM file. And they're really only tracked where that SCORM file is uploaded. So unlike the previous standard tracking methods like SCORM, like LTI, XAPI allows for flexibility and can track a broader range of learning activities, both online and offline. That flexibility means you can gather data on how learners engage with content, whether they're participating in formal training, exploring resources independently, or applying their skills in real-world scenarios. And that data can then be stored and analyzed holistically in a learning record store, LXP, LMS, whatever your kind of main source of your data is. And from there, you're going to be able to identify any skills, skill gaps, knowledge gaps, and really be able to optimize training programs. So when we talk about XAPI, it's also important to understand why interoperability is so important. So we're going to advanced learning analytics. Why is this important? There's never, when we're talking about systems, most people have an LMS in place, they have a content development tool, they also have learning that's done in many different places. Maybe you're even grabbing some off the shelf, and we have that data living in a lot of different places, and we have to compile it in one. XAPI will help, one, make that a quick, easy process. We also know that there's not a one-all-perfect system. So with that, with interoperability, you can have all of your analytics in one place. You don't have to compile it. And then we can start with that data-driven decision-making that will ultimately bring value to your organization. So when we're talking about identifying, correlations, we have our performance management system, we have our learning management system, wherever that might be. When we start identifying those correlations, we can then identify, individuals who did well on the training on X, they had outstanding performance in specific areas of their jobs. Then we can start identifying, analyzing that data and identifying who would make a good manager based off of answers and scores. Who are our top performers? What skills do they possess? And now when it comes to hiring, we now know that a top performer possesses these skills. We know what to look for in our next hire. So being able to really analyze that data and have that decision-making power through data is going to be really powerful for your organization.
That's amazing. So you can get really deeper into the data that you're going to get if you're going to invest in having this type of approach, such as scenarios and simulations. It's going to give you the data to actually measure your return on your investment, and you can couple that with the other data and the time that people have put into it. It's fascinating. That's such a deeper level than you would get usually with just measuring where people have got to, say, in a program.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could go as deep as you need to, and that's why this interoperability is so important, and why this XAPI is kind of taking over that SCORM because of its flexibility. It also allows you, we talked about our research and how skills and upskilling is so important. Having this data also really allows you to identify learning patterns, understand where there could be skill gaps, and allows us to focus on that skill-based development. I know it's so important to so many L&D professionals today to upskill and reskill. So having that data at your fingertips also always going to be important. And of course, just being able to measure the effectiveness of your training. Where do I need to change our instructional design techniques and strategy to enhance our training further and make it more effective later on down the line?
There was one other point that I think we were going to mention when we were talking about scenarios as well, and I think you just mentioned it there, and that's the use of scenarios, not just in training, but imagine if you were using them for recruitment as well. How many people actually might be neurodivergent and not cope well with tray exercises. Imagine being able to do a scenario which was much more relevant and relatable to the interview, and what a fairer way of being able to judge someone's reactions and be able to see what they would do in a situation. I think it's all fascinating. But yeah, so many organizations are starting to use XAPI, I understand. This is kind of, the new kid on the block.
It is. It's going to be the new standard moving forward. There's also the development of XAPI 2.0, because now with XAPI, the training is done in a separate place, right? You have your LMS. It's not always there. ThingLink is going to be unique because we can be embedded in almost any LMS. So you can also keep the training in one place and also transfer the data into that. So XAPI 2.0 is going to also allow you to share those files. But either way, we've kind of got it figured out a little bit here in order to make sure that you're getting all the data that you need from those scenario-based simulations.
So in the email that we'll send out to everybody, we'll make sure there's a link to the article that you wrote, which explains all of this in one post. And of course, if anyone's got any questions about XAPI, please put them in the chat, or you're welcome to contact Dee afterwards and find out more about it. I think it's a developing story, but one that's gaining traction quite quickly. And the next bucket, or the next thing that we've noticed a trend in, and this actually was something we started to say last year when we were at some of the conferences. And, we have been talking about immersive experiences for many years in ThingLink, but people often jump to headsets. And of course, headsets might be cost prohibitive for some organizations. I don't know about you, Dee, but I'm a prescription lens wearer. I find it difficult with the headsets to get it to calibrate right so that it actually kind of aligns to my vision. But also, they're just maybe not comfortable or right for everybody, going back to that point about inclusivity. So we wanted to just put together, there's a few ways in which immersive experiences we are seeing trending in L&D, and that is these kinds of both personal types of immersive experiences and shared experiences. And I think this really helps to set the scene when it comes to immersive experiences. It isn't just about headsets. So we're seeing people really gain traction with individual or mobile devices. And I've just put a selection there of devices, whether they're touchscreen or not. But mobiles are still king. And if you think about a large organization that maybe doesn't have a one-to-one strategy, and they're thinking about having that kind of immersive experience, I've got a really nice example here. And this is quite funny. I'm actually a big fan of Below Deck, which is a yachting kind of TV, reality TV. And it's really interesting because some of the yachting industry create those kind of, like we saw with the factory there, but an immersive space, which is actually the galley and where everything is in the galley. And these are things that people can sit and watch on their mobile phone whilst they're going to their new appointment. Just a silly note there, but it just helps to illustrate the fact that, immersive experiences, we're seeing the popularity of combining those and with a mobile phone as well. So that's that kind of individual view, but on a mobile device. The next thing we're seeing is immersive experiences with touch screens. So whether you're in a classroom, whether you're in a boardroom and there's an interactive panel there, we're seeing that kind of group experience where you're sharing together that immersive experience, where you can actually be more tactile with the board, or maybe even just with a projector. Now, the next one, which I think is really exciting, and I've kind of alluded to it here, is that we're seeing a big growth in immersive spaces where you've actually got the projectors, and that might be the 4 projectors above. And it's almost like that kind of igloo style, where you use just the same 360 experience that you've used for a mobile or the screen or whatever, like the one that you saw, and you can actually engage with it whilst you're sat in the room. So there's a few companies, like Igloo's one of them, but you can purchase the hardware. But imagine you could turn any white room, these 4 walls of this office, in now, and you can be transported. I think it might be the future of the way that village halls need to roll with the future. I mean, you could have a village hall that you hire out for training, right? It might be quite exciting. So those kinds of shared immersive experiences are, these dedicated rooms. I've even seen one where they had the pointer, which was like a Harry Potter wand, and you could point at the room and open up the icons as well. So someone's saying, yeah, there's a really nice comment coming here, interacting on a touchscreen with students. Yeah, really nice and tactile. Again, it's that whole point of having these different multimodalities. And then, of course, I'm not going to dismiss VR headsets, because I had the actual fortunate experience of trying the Apple Vision Pro when I was in Helsinki a couple of weeks ago. And wow, it was out of this world. I mean, there was a dinosaur that was eating out of my hand and a butterfly that was landing on my hand. It wasn't just, looking at it like this. It was really quite special. But there's a lot of other competitors that are the new Meta Quest, which are the Pico headsets, the ones that are using the new Horizon OS, and also the ability to have that pass through where you're engaging with the kind of scene, if you like, but you can also interact, like you say, my hand holding the butterfly. So this is just to show all of the different ways in which we're seeing this increasing trend of immersive spaces, which are popping up. And if you've got any other ideas, do please put them in the chat there. And then our last point, Dee, another trend that we're noticing is how organizations are really valuing that everyone can be a creator. You might not want everyone to be a creator for some things, but for creating these kinds of learning experiences, there's a recognition that if somebody is in a workplace somewhere, maybe in their own room or whatever, with like a complex machinery, if they can suggest creating that immersive experience to help pass on their knowledge to other potential employees, that's not a top-down approach. That's an organization which is valuing everybody's input.
Yeah, absolutely. And really what that tells us, or what we've seen, is that when employees feel encouraged to share ideas and contribute to innovative projects, they're more likely to feel valued and engaged in the organization, which can lead to higher job satisfaction, lower turnover rates. And on the other hand, too, that innovative culture also often attracts top talent who are going to be eager to work in an environment that values creativity and forward thinking.
And if you're setting that kind of expectation from the outset, by the way you're onboarding people, showing those kind of interactive choice boards, or, virtual tours like the Vassala one that we showed you earlier on. And the example here that's on the screen is actually where a member of the organization had access to the tools that they were using for learning and development and education. And they built this virtual park that shows potential employees and visitors all of the surrounding places that they can visit near the campus. So here you've got where it is, what are the bus routes, how do they get there, what's going on. There's a park run, there's lots of other information, and they've even got a feedback button there. And this was the idea of someone who just had, there was a belief in the organization that anyone can create these kinds of experiences. And there's another one very similar that was also used for potential employees to show them where the good places to live were near the organisation where they were going to be working as well. And I think it was based in London. So yeah, showing them the hotspots and literal hotspots and places that were good for accommodation, just something. And I just love examples like that. They really, really bring it to life. So that's our 4 key points of the trends that we're seeing in learning and development. If you've got any questions at all, please do put them in the chat. Lots of comments saying that they're loving the idea of the scenarios, wanting more opportunities to learn about it, and also using more interactive elements as well. So we've got about 15 minutes left, Dee. If we can make sure we keep to time, of course. But we always like to do a bit of a sort of sneak peek of what's coming next in ThingLink. And I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed. As Ivan said, there was a big meeting in Helsinki a few weeks ago where we were able to come together as a team and look at some of these. So our first thing is that we have come up with a new way, or a way that builds on all of the kind of experiences that ThingLink has enabled people to create up until now. Because there's a recognition that sometimes people have got those old PDFs, they've got lots of other PowerPoints. People still love a PDF, don't they? It's like, it's really hard to get away from them. But yeah, people still have those things, but they might be out of date. They're obviously static. So this is, going forward, the way that ThingLink will be able to help you transform your learning experiences. So to start with, there'll be ways for you to easily create. And we recognize that sometimes creating those scenarios, Dee, that and the current scenario builder that's there, and I put together some examples or kind of like plans to help people design them, that was based on, you know, think about your context, your challenge, your consequences, and the choices. And of course, that's still, it might be just be pen and paper, you might be sketching it out. That's really hard to do. So we're going to make it super easy for you to create using your own knowledge base. So the message is there. We know that you can bring your own images, your own media. You can use our images or media. You can even generate your own images or media with ThingLink. But now you can also bring your own knowledge base. So yeah, it's going to be, secondly, sorry, Dee.
Oh, no, you're fine. I love that the key word here is easy. So like, we just came off the chatting about a culture of innovation. And in order to have and build a culture of innovation, you need the right tools. So when we're talking about our new product, which we're super excited about, by the way, it's going to be great. Can't wait till it officially launches. And you'll be able to try it for free today, by the way. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But this really, the new product really allows you to create those immersive scenario-based simulations very easily. Anyone can create, and it is going to be, of course, you can bring your own items, but we also have the help of AI. So it makes it even faster.
Yeah, that, I mean, it's just fascinating because I just was mucking around with the Notebook LM, and I uploaded a PDF of like a home report of a house, and it created a webinar, 15-minute webinar, sort of podcast, if you like, of why I should buy this house and why I shouldn't, based on the home report, which was just fascinating. The difference, I think, that I really want to call out here is that we're going to make it really easy for you to convert those PDFs, slides, or text into those branching scenarios. But what differentiates us is that these types of conversion processes and AI here is actually trained in learning theory. So all the learning theory that we've talked about, the benefits, the ways that that can be used for successful and highly impactful training, is quite different from uploading a PDF and hearing a podcast about it. So the conversion and the way that your data is going to be used to create those scenarios or branching simulations is going to be quite different, and we're going to show you that in a minute. Yeah, and someone's just made a comment, apps like Kami are being really innovative with PDFs. Absolutely, there's a lot of other products that are doing this, but we just want to emphasize that these are actually being built on Learning Science. And of course, we want to make it really easy for you to share and deploy. So sharing by link or embedding into your learning management system. I know we've got people working in schools here, so you might use things like Google Classroom, but also then right up to using your maybe 360 Learning, Teach on Mars, very mobile kinds of learning experience platforms, learning management systems, Blackboard, Moodle, all of those. You'll be able to easily embed your materials in there. And of course, then over to Dee. Dee, you can just summarize this perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll get those outcomes and those analytics with the XAPI or LTI if you're using Moodle Blackboard. Of course, that's still a possibility there as well.
So why are we doing all this? And going back to our research, we actually carried out, as Dee mentioned, some research with 500 or so highly qualified people to complete the research, mainly instructional designers or heads of HR, for example, managers of learning and development departments. And what was the top challenge in learning and development? And it was time constraints for employees. Far and away, people find that it's like going back to your first slide with the click-through training. Someone said they didn't do the training for 6 months and then they just suddenly whizzed through it. But it's how you can make your training really those kind of bite-sized micro-learning, self-paced experiences. Keeping training updated and relevant. And of course, you can switch out and update any of your materials really, really easily. Overcoming that low engagement from employees. We need a kind of wow factor again. I don't know about you, but I used to get excited when the big telly used to get wheeled in school. And it was just like, people need to have those kinds of wow moments again, don't they? And multimodal, immersive experience, not just for headsets, but having something that you can truly immerse yourself in is bringing those engaging opportunities. And then again, back to your point, Steve, it's been really difficult to measure impact or results of training before. So hopefully, with the new XAPI and other measurement tools, you'll be able to do this. A couple of other things, and please feel free to shout out if you have another challenge that's not on there that you want to add. But we also saw people say lack of resources or budget, lack of personalization. I mean, that is, how can you have something that's relevant and relatable if you haven't got that element of personalization in it? And then, of course, the ability to scale training as well. So these are all of the things that we have built our new scenario builder and our new ways of being able to transform. And I'm just going to stop this right this second there. I bet I can't. It's going to go on. I'm going to stop that there. And I'm just going to go back and rewind that, because this is a short video showing you our brand new scenario builder. And you can have access to this if you want to try it with your own PDF. And we're just going to walk you through exactly what this looks like. So how you can convert things with AI. So I'm just going to click here. So Dee, do you want to go ahead and introduce us to it?
Absolutely excited to talk to everyone about this. So like we mentioned, convert your current static materials like your PDFs into immersive learning experiences like you see here, where your learners can interact with it, engage with it. We're going to solve those challenges that we talked about. And it's super easy to use. First, we'll create with AI. We can choose our AI model, and we're going to be able to upload that PDF into the system. You'll also be able to add an additional prompt to let it know what your training is about. Any languages, again, accessibility at the core. And then you can choose the learning experience. This is all going to be based off of, like Louise said, those pedagogical or andragogical best practices. So when we're talking about a branch scenario, it's really those bite-sized micro-learning chunks. You're also going to be able to talk about your learning objectives. Like we said, everything's easy here. So if you want to train AI and tell it to create something different than it comes up with, you can easily edit that piece. And this is going to be your output. This is going to be a micro-learning based scenario where we have those bite-sized chunks. And you then, again, anyone can create using the system, can jump in, select scenes you already have, create a new scene with our multimedia editor, select a tour you've already created, or embed a ThingLink that you've created as well. Or we can convert, like you can see, using that AI. So as easy as possible to make sure that we have all of the materials in place. This, again, is just going to be an outline. To create these pieces, you'll be able to bring in any scenes, convert new scenes. And as you jump through here, when we're talking about failure-based learning, this really allows you to branch those scenarios out however you want, but getting that outline, and this is going to be the output. Something where we can jump into those micro bite-sized learning chunks to make it engaging for learners, preventing that click-through effect, and then giving them the opportunity to really immerse themselves into this, in this example, the CPR training. And we, of course, are going to have those analytics based off of how they answer, how much time they spend on each block. So this is going to be our new scenario builder that I'm super excited to show everyone. We're, like Luis mentioned, everyone's going to be able to try this soon. It's actually free to try, and I look forward to speaking with anyone. If you do have any PDFs you want to send over to me and see a demo of what it looks like with your materials, I'm happy to set up a call and we'll talk about how in a second.
Amazing. And of course, the output of that you can view, consume, engage with on any device as well. And that is from your mobile phone right the way through to the VR headsets as well. So, and I saw there as well, I don't know if we skipped over it, but you will be able to create your individual ThingLinks or your, like the image with the tags just from text as well. So yeah, that's a combination of all of those tools coming together. Thanks for that walkthrough. You will get these slides afterwards. So if you want to click back and have another look at that video, you can. And we would love for any of you to be part of our current trials. So yeah, do get in touch and we'll make sure that you get access to that. So we've only got a few minutes left. These webinars just fly by. Other company news, ThingLink has achieved ISO 27001. And I know this sounds like it could be, you know, not as exciting as topic, but it is a big deal. Not only has ThingLink, the team, been focusing on developing the tools in line with innovation and challenges and benefits, it's also been looking after our security side as well. And we want you to have the confidence that this is all up to industry standards. So we wear our badge with pride, and big shout out to Ivan and Alexei and the rest of the team who have made sure that this happens. And another new program we've launched is our referral program. So this is a way for you to gain rewards, whether it's accounts or some kind of other benefit. You are able to go back and refer your own personal link on to everybody as well. And a really nice thank you coming through in the chat. Thank you, Michelle. Really glad to see your comments there. So if you'd like to sign up for our referral program, refer.thinglink.com. And again, this will be on the email that you get at the end. So, wow, we're coming to the end now. Dee, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our webinar, first of many. Yeah, we'll just be able to keep a track of these innovations as they grow and develop. And if you've got any more questions, if anybody wants to put anything into the chat as well. And I think it would be nice, just Ivan, if you'd like to come back, if there's been anything that you want to add to the discussions here. You've been manning the questions. I see that there's a few questions that are coming through. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to everything we've been talking about?
No, I'd like to just repeat what Dee proposed. If anyone is interested in trying out the Convert with AI function or just trying out the new scenario builder, please do reach out to us, and we'll have more news on that coming very soon.
Yeah, and maybe a scenario builder webinar as well. So that could be in the works.
Well, all that's left to say is thank you for your comments coming through. It's just so exciting to see everyone being excited about the new direction that we're taking. Someone's asking about how long access will be for if you start it and you're an account, then you'll be able to click in and start using it with your new be able to use the new scenario builder going forward. And if you've got any other questions, you're more than welcome to get in touch with us. So all that's left to say, on behalf of the whole ThingLink team, thank you very much for joining us. And if you'd like to see our other list of webinars, that'll be coming out too on the email. But I hope you have a really safe and good evening wherever you are. And if you're watching on the replay, we hope you've enjoyed this. But a huge thank you from me. Over to you, Dee.
Yes, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure being able to host this with you, or co-host it with you, Louise. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you, Ivan, for looking after our chat and our support team. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody on the next webinar. So take care and thanks, everybody.
Bye.
And that's a wrap.